I messed up my credit score all the way down to 546 points. But now that I am at 830, I can look back and think of all the things that I did to get myself to the point of having excellent credit. Hi everyone, I'm Jordan and welcome to the Wise Money Women channel, where we help you master your money and transform your life. So if you're all about getting out of debt, saving more money, and getting to the point where you're able to build wealth, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell so that you can get notified whenever we add new videos to the channel. Now, if you've seen any of my previous videos, then you know that I have not always had a great experience when it came on to managing my credit. And I will be the first one to tell you that when I first started out in trying to improve my score, I was not trying to spend a whole bunch of money. I knew that I needed to pay down my debt as a part of improving my credit, but let's be real, I didn't have time to wait until I had thousands of dollars to pay off the debt first. So all of these tips that I'm gonna share with you are ones that don't require you to pay a whole bunch of money on anything. And if you stick around with me to the end of this video, I'm gonna tell you all the steps you need to do to get started. So the first thing that comes along with trying to do better at your credit is understanding all the pieces that make it up. So your credit is made up by 5 factors. The payment history takes up 35% of your score. Your credit utilization takes up another 30% of your score. Credit history is another 15%, number of credit inquiries is 10%, and then the types of credit that you have is another 10%. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna think through each of these categories and then determine what we can do to improve these categories, hence improving your score without having to pay a whole bunch of money. So the first thing that you always wanna do is to remove the bad stuff off of your credit. And you can do that in one of 3 ways. The first is to have a goodwill letter sent to your creditors and just ask them if they would be able to remove that bad report that they have on your credit report. By them removing that, it will end up making your payment history look a whole lot better because now you won't have that black eye of missing something, hence improving your score. Now, if you ask them and you just say, hey, this was my fault, here's how I messed it up, this is what I'm doing to make it better, this is how this score is impacting me and stopping me from being able to do better and to be better, and they're kind of like, yeah, no, we don't care, we're not doing anything, then you can always think about doing a pay for delete. And that is a process, usually when it is with a collection agency, where they will ask you to say, okay, how much can I pay to get rid of this debt? And if I pay it off, will you remove it from my credit report? And the key thing that you want to think about here is that to make sure that you never, ever, ever pay anything until they send it back to you in writing that they are going to remove it. And then the third way that you can go about getting negative items removed from your score is to dispute the reporting with your creditor. So under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you are protected and you need to make sure that your creditors are reporting the right information, that if it's past 10 years, it's dropping off of your report, that they're giving the right amount that you owe to the right people, and how many times you've been late. So under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, if you have a creditor that is listing something that's not right on your credit report, you can absolutely dispute that and have them verify that the information is correct. And if they can't verify that the information is correct, then they need to remove it off of your credit report. And a lot of companies pretty much either don't have the information, or they can't dig up the original documentation, or they're pretty much just like, I don't really care, and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to remove it from your report. So sometimes folks are able to get away with that. Sometimes they're really persistent and they're keeping on there. And either way, it's worth giving it a try, because getting bad stuff removed off of your credit report will always give you the highest boost in your credit score. Another way for you to boost up that payment history category and able to get a boost to your credit score without paying anything is for you to have like a friend or family member vouch for you. And that's being added as an authorized user to someone's card. Now, being added as an authorized user means that you have access to use that credit. You are not responsible for paying for it. However, you get the same privileges that they have from their payment history and for the length of their credit history, and their credit limit also is reflected on your credit report. So you get all the benefits with none of the bad stuff of having to actually pay the bill. So it's really important for the person who you pick to ensure that they have good credit, because if they end up blowing up that credit card or missing payments or doing something bad, it goes into collections, then you are also going to be impacted by that. And it's also important for the person who you're talking to know that as an authorized user, you would be able to have access to that credit and to not have to pay for it. So they definitely want to make sure they understand what's going on their side, and you want to make sure you understand what's happening on your side. The next thing you can do to improve your credit score fast and not have to pay anything is in the credit utilization category. Now, your credit utilization is measured by the amount of revolving credit you're actually using right now, divided by the limit of all those revolving credits. So it's like the total amount of possible credit that you would have available. And the lower that number is the better it will be for your credit score, because there is an idea that says you want to stay under a 30% or under a 20% utilization, but really you'll see huge effects by being under 10, under 9% is when you really start seeing monster jumps in your credit score. So the easiest way, or I guess the most obvious way for you to be able to improve your credit utilization, is to get that top number down. So instead of having owed $10,000, if you only owed $2,000, that would be a really easy way of lowering your credit utilization. But that costs a whole bunch of money, and in this video, we're talking about things that you can do that don't require you to spend a whole bunch of money. So the other way for you to be able to lower your credit utilization is to get that bottom number bigger. So you can call your creditors that you currently have credit cards for and ask them if they can increase your credit limit. So some of them do it online, where you can just hit a button and you can request the increase. Others, you can give them a call and say, hey, I am trying to improve my credit score, or, I want to use this card more, but the limit just isn't high enough. Or if something else is going on with you, you're moving to a new apartment or something, use the language that they would be willing to say, yes, we should give you a higher limit for. So for example, when I was moving into my house, I called them up and said, hey, I'm moving. I'm going to need to be buying appliances and dishes and all these kinds of things. So I want to spend this card more. Can you give me an increase? And they easily gave me a 20% increase without me having to do anything. So getting an increase on your current cards is a great way for you to be able to lower your credit utilization without having to spend any money. Another way to lower that credit utilization without having to really do much is to get a consolidated loan. So when you do a loan consolidation, you can take all of your credit cards, pay them off with this loan, and then you are paying back the loan just as you were before. But now your credit cards are clear. So because you pretty much just erased your credit card debt, then it ends up giving you a much better utilization. One thing you do want to think about though is that when you move that from a credit card to a consolidation loan, it doesn't mean that you're not paying the bill, you're just paying somewhere else. And even if you think that, well, you have bad credit, so you're not going to be able to get one of these, I will have a link in the description of a few companies that actually will consider giving you a consolidation loan if you have at least a 640 credit score. So it's not entirely the worst thing possible if you're trying to build up credit, as long as you're kind of somewhere close by. And then in those links, I will also provide a provider that will allow you to put in your information and then find out other possible lenders and their interest rates that they would lend to you without having to run your credit, because we're not trying to farm out your credit everywhere. We're just trying to be able to do things that will help us to increase our credit score. You can also decrease your credit utilization without having to spend more money by getting an additional credit card just for the purpose of having a higher limit. So you would get a new card that has a credit limit of, let's say, whatever number it is, let's say it's $1,000. You could get that new credit card and just don't use it. The only purpose of having that card is so that you can have a higher potential amount of credit available to you. You're not going to use the card so that you end up accumulating more debt. You're not going to use the card for anything aside from just having it there so you can have credit available so that your credit utilization will be lower. A free way for you to be able to boost your credit is to use the Experian Credit Boost option. So what Experian does is that they allow you to put in your information, attach some accounts for your phone bill or utilities, and they will give you credit for your good payment history on that bill or on those bills. It doesn't cost you anything, but the only thing to keep in mind is that it is only on Experian. It is not offered on any of the other credit bureaus, and so it would only increase your Experian score. But Experian, by their data, says that on average, their clients are finding a 13-point boost in their credit score, and that is nothing to sneeze at, especially if you're pretty much in that borderline of almost being over the threshold of being in good credit. So it's definitely worth trying. And if you find out that it didn't work for you or that you just don't want it or anything like that, you can always just remove your accounts that you had them monitor, and then, life goes back to normal the way how it was. Another thing you can do is just wait until your score gets cleaned up on its own. Now, you have to remember that credit scores are a snapshot in time of a specific period. So it's not something that is long lasting. It changes over time. And as you continue to use credit, as you continue to do better choices with your credit, your score will improve because old things will fall off and they won't matter as much. So things like credit inquiries that will last on your report for 2 years, eventually they will fall off. Some bankruptcies and foreclosures will stay for 7 years and eventually they fall off. And some bankruptcies will stay on for 10 years. But after 10 years, pretty much everything is going to be off of your credit report. So if you're pretty close and you had something that happened 6 years ago, by now that event is not going to weigh as much on your credit score anymore. And then eventually that will fall off of your report and not even matter anymore. And another thing that you might want to just consider about that is that there are some debts that have a statute of limitation. Now that is based on the state that you live in, but let's say that the state you're in has a 5-year statute of limitation. If you have a debt that you still owed for 4.5 years or something like that, there isn't a lot of point in terms of improving your credit score to contact that creditor and say, hey, I'm going to pay it, because when you do, it ends up bringing that credit or that event back to life again on your credit report, and it starts having issues for your credit report as though it had happened today. Now, I'm not advocating for you to not pay your bills, and I am not telling you that, you should just sit and wait until things roll off so that it's no longer collectible and then you just don't have to pay the bill, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that they can do to you in between when you stopped paying and before you hit that statute of limitation. But if you're kind of in that stage where it's almost gone and it's almost done, they can't collect it anyway, and it's about to drop off your score or drop off your report, then it might be worth it to kind of just be careful if you even want to do anything else with that debt. Some things you just wait and time will fix your score on its own. Finally, the best way for you to start seeing improvements on your credit score is for you to practice good credit behavior. And that means paying your credit cards, paying your debts, paying any loans that you have on time, at least the minimum every time. And it also includes making sure that you're making payments on other expenses like your utilities or your phone bill or your rent as well, because if you don't make those payments, those folks are able to put collections on your credit report, which could impact your credit score. You also want to make sure that you are keeping track of how often you are applying for credit. You don't want to be running around and throwing your credit score everywhere and looking like you're desperate for credit, because when the bureau see that, or when the scoring company sees that, they're going to think, oh yeah, something's going on with you, and it seems like you're not in a stable position, and then they're going to make impacts to your score based off those activities. So you do want to make sure that you are just watching what you're doing, that you're monitoring your credit, that you are doing the best that you can to make payments, to follow up on things. If you end up in a situation where you miss a payment, that you call up the companies, you try and get them to remove it from goodwill, and that you are just keeping on tabs on your credit. So now that we've gone through some of the strategies that you can kind of use to be able to improve your credit, now let's talk about how you even start. So the first place that you start when it comes down to improving your credit is to pull your credit score. For most people, you can do that for free. It's usually going to be a Credit Karma or a Credit Sesame, and those folks will give you a Vantage score, and that's perfectly acceptable because you just want to know how you're kind of doing. If you were in the stage where you were going to buy a house and you needed to have a specific number, then that would be a different conversation. You would more want to pull your FICO score through MyFICO or somewhere. But with just for general knowledge purposes, one of the free folks will work just fine, and we'll have the link in the description for that. And then you also want to pull your credit report. Again, link in the description for how you can do that for free. And this will allow you to be able to see what is listed on your credit report. Once you know what's listed, then you can figure out who you need to contact, what you need to fix, what you need to get removed from your credit report if you need to. So those are the first places to get started. Finally, getting super organized with your debts, figuring out who you owe, how much, and getting contact information for those folks is a great way for you to kind of get started on improving your credit, because then you will know who you need to contact. You can get information in terms of if you want to send a goodwill letter, who you need to send that to, where you need to send it, or it might even be something as simple as just going online and Googling the email address for the CEO or some top level executive at a company for you to be able to get some help. And I know that it might sound like this is just throwing a Hail Mary and you don't really know if it's going to work, but I see online all the time people who send goodwill letters to the CEO and their secretary messages them back and say, yeah, sure, we'll remove those 10 missed payments that you had. Oh, I'm really sorry you were going through a divorce and it ruined your credit. And here, I hope that this will help you to get back on your feet by us clearing up these things off of your credit report. And I myself have even sent a goodwill letter to ask a company to please, please, please remove a negative marking off of my credit report. And when they did, my score jumped by just about 80 points when they were done doing that. So don't scoff at it. Don't think that it's not worth your time. At this point, what's the worst case that can happen? You send the letter and nothing happens and you're in no worse shape than you were before. So you absolutely want to think about just asking. They're not as bad as we think they are, and they're not big bad companies that don't want to help. Sometimes they actually do. Now, if you were able to get value out of this video, then go ahead and hit the like button, because YouTube loves it and it will help us immensely in building this channel. And if you like what you heard and you want to make sure you don't miss anything else, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the bell so that you can get notified whenever we add new videos to the channel.